Good morning, you guys. It is Amanda and Baron with Kickin'Cancer Cares, and we are back again.
We finished up our pizza. I got one. One bite left.
We did, and I ate some potato poppers.
You ate all the potato poppers.
I know. Take it back.
It happens.
We had Oddmo's Pizza. He's our sponsor for our first half, and oh my gosh, his food is absolutely amazing. So if you're looking for pizza, they deliver. You can order it to go, pick it up, all the things. And
bring it to the station.
Yeah, bring it to the station. We do not have a sponsor for the second half yet. So if you are interested in sponsoring or what that may look like or what the cost may be, email me, amanda@kslm.news.
Yeah. Well, we got a little bit into these burn pits that he's talking about. There's a connection that Andrew made for me that is so intriguing. So I referenced Agent Orange, and I won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but basically in the midst of Vietnam, which was a really dense, foresty country, we were trying to find a way to find the Vietnamese. And so Monsanto designed this chemical that they sprayed over the country to kill the plants so that we could find the Vietnamese people. Agent Orange has been linked to numerous cancers, and I believe that you found a relatively accurate number on that.
Yeah, it looks like the VA estimates more than 650,000 veterans have. These are the ones who've received benefits for Agent Orange. So it took several decades for Agent Orange to be connected to cancers that they were
5 to 6 decades ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing that you said I think is so important is we had Dave Wentz on our show, okay?
Yeah.
Dave Wentz was not officially in Vietnam. He was in Cambodia. He was in Laos. He was in these neighboring countries. And so the point I believe we should make here is to get your benefits, the VA says, were you in Vietnam?
Okay.
Yeah, and that just recently Congress passed what's called Blue Water Navy. So the Blue Water Navy bill extends to those neighboring countries and a certain nautical mileage, and so that cracked open a lot of eligibility for people who are being denied.
Right.
The problem, I don't know if it's problem is the right word to use here, but is people have died and were denied benefits years and years and years ago. Their families were battling, it was a whole thing. So while it's great that the bill has passed and it is allowing those veterans who are still alive to apply for these benefits and receive them, we've unfortunately lost a dramatic portion of that generation of warfighter. And
well, and if you think about the way it was before, is were you in Vietnam? Except how do we get Agent Orange? We put it in a plane and we flew it in and we dropped it. Kind of like when you watch a forest fire and they have to bring that stuff into So that was the same concept, except if you were in the plane, you're exposed to the Agent Oranges, but you weren't in Vietnam.
Okay, yeah.
So even if you were
in these numbers that he's showing aren't even close to accurate because it's the ones that were paid benefits because they were in Vietnam.
Right.
And it was 650,000 vets who are being paid, who have claims because of Agent Orange.
Now, what about the people that... Because wasn't there like pregnancy issues and people born after that had effects from Agent Orange that weren't even overseas? And then what about the people that were in that country? So that's just for our vets that were in that.
I would venture to guess this is probably 5 to 6 times as high as that.
I mean,
I would have to agree.
It looks like Agent Orange was sprayed over 20 million acres in Vietnam.
Wow.
So millions of veterans.
We don't know how many Vietnamese were affected by it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like that, we're just talking just vets that have gotten their benefits, not the ones that are terrified. You know how many veterans are terrified of hospitals that don't even want to go or bother?
Well, and it sometimes you expect that a cancer you're going to have it in your mind, right? There's only certain cancers that this could be linked to. So maybe my cancer has nothing to do with military service. So unless someone's telling you, hey, you may want to look and see if that's connected to your military service, you're just out there battling cancer on your own.
Yeah.
Except you made an interesting statement to me when we were getting ready for this show, Andrew, that the Agent Orange is a generation that's probably in their 70s or 80s now, okay? Except now we have young men that are, well, you're 36.
36, yeah.
So anywhere from that 24 to 36, 40-year-old age group that were in Iraq or maybe they were in Afghanistan and they had to dig a pit to put all this stuff in. Do you think that these burn pits could be the Agent Orange of your generation?
Absolutely. I think that is the defining statement that I've been using. I've been doing veteran advocacy for 15 years. I've worked for members of the U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, the governor of Nevada, and now doing this. And there's no doubt this is our cancer as Agent Orange.
Yeah.
And luckily, we have had an Agent Orange generation before us who were in a conflict that affected so many people. And so now they're connecting certain respiratory and
gases that they were using.
Just the stuff that like you end up breathing in. But everyone knows about the exposures. It's just what is the health outcome of the exposure, right? Like, and you have to have, we're talking about the government, it's the VA. They have to have specific illnesses, and you have to be diagnosed with those illnesses, and then you have to connect the dots that, like, I have this illness because I was here, right? So it's a process for sure.
Yeah.
Well, beyond the cancers, and to the best of my knowledge, Andrew doesn't have cancer.
Okay.
No, as far as I know.
But there, you have a couple other issues that you mentioned to me that are probably directly related to the fact that you were being a knothead in front of a flaming pit in the ground, and one of them is your stomach, and the other one is your sinuses, right? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it is long. I'm going to speak a little out of turn here, just from my personal experience in advocacy. A lot of folks from my generation who were in the conflicts that my generation was involved in, we have stomach issues. A lot of folks have gastrointestinal issues, lung, respiratory issues. And then, I'm doing it right now. Today is one of those days where it's like, I know we live in the Willamette Valley, so it's like, we have 99% of all allergies here. But coming from Las Vegas, where there was like zero allergies.
Growing up in the desert.
It's, the rhinitis, sinusitis, those things that just kind of get stuck in your, your nose. Your sinuses.
Yeah.
But stomach issues have been something that it's just an unfortunate reality, and I make a really terrible joke that I'm sure that I have some sort of stomach tumor, cancer that's just manifesting. It's just a matter of time before it
pops up.
It's dark humor, but I gotta eat more. What was it, paprika? More deviled eggs.
More deviled eggs.
Bang the bad luck.
So I just think it's interesting, or maybe it's unfortunate that we have guys who that's the career path they want to go to, right? Or they're knuckleheads, they need someplace to go. But the military becomes a good option for them. And then they wind up in their service over here in this conflict that they weren't involved in creating the conflict, they had to go defend the conflict. Right? My brother was in Iraq twice. He was in Afghanistan 3 times. He was in Qatar. My brother's been over in that area numerous times. And that's just because that's the career he chose. He was a 20-plus year Army guy. But then you don't know that because this is the career path you chose, that these are the effects of some of the stuff that is happening.
Well, these aren't the hazards you're trained to look for. You're
trained to look out for the guy that's going to shoot at you.
The last thing you think is going to get you is the smoke, or or the sand, for that matter. And so, it is kind of wild. It's, again, similar to Agent Orange. I promise that the folks running around in Vietnam during that conflict were not concerned about Roundup being the thing that was going to kill them.
Exactly.
No, there's a few movies that are out there, and I won't get too deep into the movies, but what they discovered early on in Vietnam in the early 60s was it was hard to find these Vietnamese because they would dig tunnels through the mountains. And it's like, how do you find your enemy if there's all these bushes and all these trees, and all of a sudden they pop out of nowhere and they're killing you? And so I'm not trying to defend the decision to make Agent Orange. I'm like, if you can get rid of the bushes, you can find the enemy quicker.
Right.
And that's just the reality of war, unfortunately. Well, now the reality is that you don't have a bunch of bushes, you have a bunch of sand.
Yeah.
And that's the war you fought, was sand, not bushes.
Well, and again, like we were at a disadvantage from the start, right? Russia was at war with Afghanistan, forever, and I think a lot of countries have tried to take Afghanistan over the history of it being a nation. And same with Iraq. And so it's like there's radiation that's leaked into the environmental, whether it's in the water Yeah. You know, the rivers, you know,
you go back to the early 80s, and Russia tried to invade Afghanistan. And they had the same results in Afghanistan that we had in Vietnam. Afghanistan became the Vietnam for the Russian country, right? They did not succeed in taking Afghanistan, but in the meantime, they bomb it and they do all this stuff. So like you say, the radiation is in the sand.
Yeah.
The sand gets stirred up, and then you guys are out there.
It's a consequence of, you know, weapons, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, even, you know, in the state of Oregon, right? Like shooting out in a non-shooting range, they don't want you to do that because of the lead and you know, the ammunition that goes in the environment.
Right.
It's not good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted Andrew to come in here and bring awareness to our vets and what they do, and you know, remember when deployed and what they're going through. And these conflicts are not going to go away, unfortunately. And we still have knuckleheads from Las Vegas that need someplace to go, and so they join the military.
That's right. The Marine Corps is not looking, you know.
No, but it was also intriguing that when I sat down with Andrew, and it's the same question that you and I always ask. You know, what's your why? What's your personal connection to the Kickin'Cancer message?
Yeah.
And I'm the one guy in the room that didn't wear red for a reason.
I know. I'm picking up that it may be because of Agent Orange.
Oh, that would have been really good.
That would have been a good.
That's really good.
It's actually.
You're welcome. We'll be here all night.
that was good.
I hadn't even thought that.
I didn't. I totally missed that. That was shame
really
on me.
Good. No, actually, it's Andrew's mom's story.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Orange is blood cancer.
Okay.
So I want him to share his mom's story.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. Well, it's interestingly enough, my grandfather, my mom's dad, was in Vietnam. I don't know if this is connected by any means. We'd never connected the dots for that. But my mom abruptly, a few years ago, somewhere around 2016, was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. You know, she battled that for a few years and ended up passing away from ALL. And it was a very long battle, and, you know, it definitely adjusted my entire opinion about the impact of cancer, not just on you as the person, but as the family, the cost,
the ripple effect.
Oh man, it's and you know, chemo and what it, you know, how it affects people. You know, my mom spent 2 to 3 weeks out of a month in the hospital. Wow. She was getting spinal taps and bone marrow biopsies, and which are very painful and disruptive procedures, right? So it's not like she didn't get to just get chemo and go home, or, you know, she was hospitalized for quite a bit, and, you know, having to make the decision of hospice for somebody who was so young. And my dad, you know, had a really difficult time making that decision. And so,
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Ironically, I had gone through a divorce, and I ended up moving from Oregon back to Las Vegas, and so I ended up getting it's a blessing and a curse to, you know, be there for your mom's passing. Yeah. But getting to be there, it profoundly changed my life, for sure. Yeah. I always tell people, you know, I again, not to lock in cliches, but, you know, when people are like, oh, my mom is this or that, I'm like, enjoy your mom. Like, you have no idea the number of times that I go to call my mom and, like, how do I cook chicken? Like, you know, like, I still do it now, and she passed in 2019, but it's like, there are times when I'm having a bad day, and I'll go to, like, you know, and it definitely impacts you. And I feel like I'm getting misty eyed right now. I'm trying my very best to not, because this is the one conversation that normally gets me. I have cried more since my mom has died than I have probably my entire life. You know, I was this, like, battle-hardened kid from Las Vegas who joined the Marine Corps and then, you know, went to war, and, like, I should be pretty tough, but, you know, losing your mom is, you don't expect it to, you know, affect you forever, right? At least I didn't. I've had a lot of people die in my life. It's kind of the narrative for my life, actually. I talked to a guy this weekend about how the casualty of sometimes being a bad guy is that you have to watch all the good guys pass. And that's kind of the curse of that. So, yeah. And I mean, not just me, but now, you know, my dad had to say goodbye to the woman he loved for 25 years. And now he's alone, and he's had we're talking about a very tough man,
a
construction worker out of Las Vegas. That's not an easy job, and he battles depression and isolation. We're trying to move him up here to Oregon because his best friend's the dog. And to be really honest, if the dog passes, like, I have genuine concerns of my dad.
What your dad gonna do?
Yeah.
You can only lose so many people. Your heart. Really, it's what do they call that? You when your spouse dies and they pass a couple years later.
You literally died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
So, it's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very real thing.
Well, I want to shift gears a little bit for you, maybe a little easier for you.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's a cleanser for you.
Yeah. I did the finger.
Yeah. Well, when I first met Andrew, Victoria Shin thought it'd be good for me because of the Courtney place.
Yeah.
And of course I was wearing my Kickin'Cancer stuff, and he's like, we talk about that too, and that was really hard for him to share. With me before, and I'm like, can you do this on the radio show? So,
well, and Victoria,
kudos to you for doing that.
Victoria is, she's such an incredible woman. You want to talk about like people who shining optimism and just joy.
She's one of them.
I was just bragging about her the other day to somebody. I'm like, it's like she's on a second life.
Yeah,
and so her outlook on life is to be more joyful and.
Well, and I think part of why it is that when she was in her fight with cancer, you're just in the fight. You don't think about it, right? Mm-hmm. But if you remember the time she came in and she had gone in and she knew she had to go across the hallway for her chemo.
Yes.
And all she could think about was, I got to go across the hallway for my chemo. And they're like, but the cancer's gone. And she just couldn't grasp it. Mm-hmm. And they said, we can count on this hand that when people have survived what you went through.
Yeah.
Well, then I did some digging with statistically, and 2% of people survive past the 5-year mark if they went through chemo. Chemo's not a good option. 98% of the time, you don't make it past 5 years. And she's one of those 2%.
That's amazing.
And she's on her, and she's just loving life, and she's an advocate for Kickin'Cancer.
Well, she's very maternal to me. Like she's
the mom, right?
I mean, for my very first meeting with her, like my very first meeting with her, it was like motherly, and so telling her, and here's the craziest part about her to me is she has a personal story of strength and going through it firsthand, and she cared more about my story, like I'm talking to her and she's like trying to like, hey, like, and I'm like, didn't you go through cancer? Like, like it just doesn't seem right. Yeah, but she's a lover. I just met her in this job, so in the past year, and I definitely count her as one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope she listens and hears this, because I don't know if I've ever said these things to her before.
I'll make sure she hears it.
Okay.
Now she's going to be teary-eyed. Yeah. She's going to be teary-eyed. And just really quick, no matter how manly you are or whatever, you're allowed to have your feelings.
I'm good with it. I just I try not to do it in public very much.
On camera? I feel ya.
For the world,
we did this show for 2 full years, and I'm glad that we didn't have cameras, because there was a few episodes where we were both having a hard time.
I would still give you dignity on camera.
Yeah, you did. I lost at one time, and she saved me. She shifted the camera.
Did.
But there's one other guy's story that I really want you to tell before we run out of time, and it's one of your residents there at Courtney's place, and his name is Jerry Bacon, and it's what happened right at the end of his life that is just so powerful. Can you share that story too, Andrew?
Yeah. So Jerry Bacon passed away. He had cancer. We Courtney Place is a very unique. What we've created at Courtney Place is very unique. It's not just an apartment complex. The tagline is, we're an affordable apartment complex for low-income veterans, and that's it in a nutshell. But we have a wraparound services nonprofit that's completely embedded in that. And so when I came on to take over this project, I was, I've been doing this for 15 years. I'd seen everybody's recreating the wheel, and they're looking for innovative this and innovative that. And it was kind of like, hey, what if we just return to the basic human need, the humanity of it all? What if we just create a community?
Yeah.
And so that was the goal. I mean, every tour I did with our power and our building not on, right? And I'm just community. And I'm sure everybody, like all the donors, everybody like, this guy's crazy. Like that's not going to be enough to solve the veteran homeless problem or to get them up on their feet. But it is. And we've really exemplified that. And it's almost to our detriment because I have 34 veterans living at Courtney Place. Veterans don't always talk about their trauma with other people, but when you have a community like ours, they're sharing all of their stories. Exactly.
Yeah.
And a great example of that is I reached out to Andrew last year for one of our military appreciation games. And what was so fun is he created a T-shirt that had the two teams were playing and the date they were playing. And then you brought like 7 or 8 vets out to a baseball game.
We're talking about like 60-plus-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and they all got to go throw their first pitch out, and they were just having the time of their life.
They're like 8-year-olds in the dugout. Like,
I bet.
No personal space. They have Sharpies, and they're getting autographs.
They're like, "May Mr. Baseball player sign my sign of the shirt."
There's a Venezuelan guy who's not speaking. He's speaking like broken English, and they're like, "I don't care, sign my jersey."
Right
here. But
but there was one guy there that like we probably should have cut him off, but like the guy's dying
That's
from
what
cancer.
It's for, though.
But
the guy had stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't cut him off. Just let him enjoy his life.
Let him be, yeah.
But he did pass.
No, that's
a different guy.
Interestingly enough, he has cancer all throughout his body, and he's not doing chemo. He's letting the process go the way it's going to go.
His chemo is called Bud Light.
Yeah, his chemo. Yeah, he smokes like a chimney. He's a tough bird. As a matter of fact, we have 7 veterans at Courtney Place with cancer right now.
Wow.
I'm sorry, 6. Jerry Bacon passed. And I was going through the list. I mean, it's the cold and the wet, and so if they get the flu or a cold, it could really compromise their system and turn into something else. And I'm going through the list, and his name's Gene, and I'm like, "How's Gene?" Now you know what? I know how Gene's doing. I saw him a couple days ago, and he's he's just full of energy. Jerry Bacon was in a wheelchair, a motorized scooter deal, and he came to us in August. We opened in April. He came to us in August, and really a statement to the community aspect of what we're doing. So we have a shuttle, and it's ADA friendly, so we discovered pretty early on how important the coast is to some of these veterans that we have at Courtney Place, because while any of us in this room could hop in our car and go to the coast, it's only an hour and a half away. Like, we brag about it probably, right?
Yeah.
When you come from a low-income environment, like, maybe you have transportation issues, and if you don't, you probably have financial barriers. And so, anyway, we took folks to the coast, and Jerry ended up going with us and was flying around in his motorized wheelchair.
Yeah.
He came back, had a family meeting, told his family he was done with chemo, and that he was going to let that process go. And a few days later, he was put on hospice, and a few days later, he died.
Oh, wow.
But he, we are very proud that we were helping him knock bucket list items off at the end. And even when he was in the hospital, he didn't want to give up his apartment. He's on hospice, right? Like, he knows he's going, but he was still like, "Don't give up my apartment. I make him back."
Don't leave my place alone.
Yeah, don't let somebody take my place. And so, and again, working with the family, he passed, and the family has to navigate the VA benefits and all that fun stuff. So,
well, and I think the thing I love about that story is we've talked about, if I were to get the diagnosis and I did this particular drug, whatever it is, and it gives me one more year, but I feel like crap in that whole year.
Right.
So do I want quantity of life or quality of life?
Right.
And in Jerry's case, he wanted quality of life.
Yeah.
And he went to the coast, and he zipped around in his little motor scooter, and he came home, and he said, "I'm done with chemo," and he died on his terms.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he died on his
Absolutely.
terms, And I think that's the great thing about that story.
Absolutely.
So,
I love what you guys are doing for the vets, by the way. That's really awesome.
A lot of fun. We didn't
imagine.
sign up for this. We didn't expect, at least.
Right.
We definitely signed up for it. We didn't expect to be there for folks as they navigated some, fatal health conditions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to quickly give you the timeline item because we're going to get more deeply into this.
Okay.
And we're almost out of time. But it was March the 28th of 2022, not long after you and I met, that I got a phone call to meet some people in Albany to help a little boy named Ozzie Brown.
Oh, yes. Ozzie.
Yep. So Go Team Ozzie officially started on March the 28th, 2022. Wow. And we're going to have several episodes to get more into Ozzie's story.
Yeah.
But that's when I got a phone call, "Can you help with this thing and this little boy?" And it was my honor to be involved in his life as it was.
Absolutely.
So, Yeah, and I'm going to stop talking because I'm going to cry.
Very
good
powerful
kid,
story.
good kid,
Yeah.
good
Okay,
kid.
really quick, Andrew, how do people get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out, help, or need your services?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in the office. We're directly across the street from the YMCA in downtown Salem, for Cottage and Court, so you can always pop in, and my team will find me. You can always shoot me an email, Holbert, HOLBERT, at theyonline.org.
Okay, perfect. And if you guys didn't catch any of that for whatever reason, email me, Amanda at kslm.news, and I will pass you along all of his information.
And if you're watching on YouTube, I guarantee it just probably went right across the screen right now. And if you're not subscribed, please go to YouTube and subscribe. And if you are listening anywhere in the world, we had this Joshua Warren from England. We really want to find your services to shout out on our show.
Yeah.
So, give Amanda and I an email. We'll shout your services out too.
All right. And let me know if you would be interested in being a sponsor.
Yes.
All right. We'll be back next week
as the movement continues.